And there's one. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to an extended Louis B. Free radio show, Brain Food from the Heartland. As you know, I've been talking about this incredible National Geographic book, Herbal, 100 Herbs from the World's Healing Traditions. I have as my very special guest, the author, Prunella Hernandez. Good afternoon.
Hi there. How are you doing today?
I'm doing better now that I'm talking with you.
Super. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm delighted. First, let's talk a little bit about you and your background. Tell us about yourself.
Oh, okay. Well, I live in North Carolina. I'm in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains, where it's such a beautiful homestead here with my husband and my youngest 13-year-old. I do have two older kids who are already out in the world. So I only been here about 3 years, because before this I was more or less a city girl. Even though I was way into plants, this is like my first chance to really get my hands dirty and try this whole gardening thing out that everyone's been talking about. I'm a huge fan of native plants, and since I've got some woods here on the property, I find it my important calling to bring attention and tend to and protect the native plants on the property. There's also a lot of weeds and invasive plants, and so I love to work with those and find healing remedies with those plants. And I'm having a lot of fun gardening. It's also a lot more work than we thought. My husband and I, we look at each other at the peak of summer, we're like, we need help. But we love it. We really love it. It's like so peaceful and wonderful, and empowering to, try and grow these medicines and these foods and live that lifestyle.
You're a clinical herbalist and an ethnobotanist. I love that. What got you into to herbs?
I think my interest really started with the interest in how the body works. I do, I had a youth of, I was very academically inclined, and I loved like all the science classes. And so that got me into like studying, all the bones of the body and all the blood cells and all the organs and just, learning about diseases and conditions and health and how the body's supposed to work. And so from that, I really had a keen interest in health and healing. And I always thought I'd go to medical school. And when I actually decided it was time to start applying to medical school, I thought, okay, I was more interested in this real world healing. I watched my grandmothers when I was young, and they're both Latin American. My grandmother in Mexico City, where I spent a lot of time growing up, worked a lot with herbs, and I saw her engage with the neighbors and anytime someone had a malady, she would fix them right up and make a batch of tea and sit with people and talk about their health. And I just thought this was something that piqued my interest. And so once I made the connection, I said, Mom, I'm not going to medical school. I'm going to be an herbalist. And you can imagine how thrilled she was at that. But here I am. So it all came to fruition.
Now. Had to be thrilled now.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
There's so much I want to talk about. I just have to ask you this, because I see that you have some, it says, and when I was reading your bio, that several pets. Still have them?
Yeah, I'm sure you just heard one of them. And I do have two dogs. They're both Australian Shepherds.
Wow.
They're relatively young, like 3 and 4 years old, but I've never had dogs in my life either. So, I was like, when we got moved onto this homestead, I was like, I guess we need a dog now. and we got Duke, who's the older dog, and I have just fallen in love. I am like the most spoily dog mom ever.
You're
And then we got
supposed to be.
chickens. Yep, yep. We got chickens, we've got rabbits, and we have a cat.
Wow,
So
that's a
yeah.
lot. Uh, there's so much, again, there's so much I want to talk about. As I keep saying, and I've been saying to my audience, I absolutely love this book, Nat Geo's Herbal, 100 Herbs from the World's Healing Traditions. Mimi Prunella Hernandez is the author and my guest. The book available everywhere and everywhere online. I always like to ask people, please buy it as close to home as possible and keep those bookstores, be they chain or independent, in business. Again, Nat Geo, so it's available everywhere. I have so many pages I showed you earlier turned down, so I'm going to jump around a bit because I know we've
Sure.
got limited time, and I'm not sure which page I had the. I a fan of nopalitos, the
Oh,
in the jar. I find
oh
them here in the
yes.
jar, yeah, and
Uh-huh.
I love them.
Uh-huh.
And I can't remember who turned me on to them, but I love them. I generally have a jar. I have a jar in the fridge now that I opened just the other day. That the cactus, but I didn't know. I knew I liked it, but I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
about it.
Mm-hmm.
You wanna?
Sure. And there seriously, you picked one of my favorites.
Yay.
I said I am Latin American. I spend a lot of time in Mexico, and we spend a lot of time eating cactus and preparing cactus, both the cactus pads and the fruits. And lo and behold, I'm in North Carolina. When I moved here, I'm sorry, when I moved to this land, I saw this giant cactus stand. And, believe it or not, cactus can also grow in North America, even up through Canada. And so that's prickly pear cactus, and it grows in the mountains, and it grows like here. I've got a lot of clay land. But I have had so much fun with that cactus stand. You got to be careful because it's got spines and it's got these prickly hairs. But, cactus is a staple food in Mexico. And it's very medicinal, especially the green, the nopalitos that you're talking about. And I think like the most medicinal aspect of it that you'll see in research is the fact that it really helps soften the blood sugar spike. It really helps people manage blood sugar, and especially when eaten with meals. And so it's great that it's such a common staple side dish in the Mexican culture, because it's really helping people with diabetes management and prevention. And it's so rich in probiotics. And then there's the fruit. Here, the fruit is very red and kind of bluish purple red, and it is so delicious. It tastes like a tropical fruit. But it's hard to get into because the surface of the fruit has these little hairs that are like splinters. So like here in my cactus stand, I can harvest like 10 gallons worth, but it's a lot of work if I want to invest all that energy. But I take the fruits and I scrub them. Of course, I have these thick rubber gloves, and I scrub the fruits with sand, just a bucket of sand, and I just scrub them on all ends, and that gets those prickly splinters off. And then I spray them down. And then I cut them in half, and then there's more work because in the middle, there's all these pebbly seeds that are not edible. So you have to scoop those out. And then you get this little tasty pulp that's so delicious and colorful. And if I don't want to do all that work, I'll just scrub them and then run them through a juicer and get this juice that I then turn into wine, like literally.
Yeah.
Or I make cocktails and mocktails with it, or desserts. Like for my son's birthday, I made a prickly pear fruit cheesecake, and that was so amazing. But it's also medicinal because those deep hues, those deep purple pink colors are medicine, and they're antioxidant for the body, and they're tonics for our blood vessels, and they help keep our blood vessels healthy and elastic. And that goes for anything of that color, like blueberries and strawberries and raspberries and pomegranates and you know,
I
all
love
these
pomegranates,
colorful
yeah.
foods.
Pomegranate
Very.
season, they're rolling in, and
Uh-huh.
I
Uh-huh.
generally, yeah, and probably 2 weeks from now, I'll have my seasonal red pomegranate hands
Yes.
because I do, and
Yes.
I eat them. I eat them. I get, I get all the arrows out, and then I eat them with my hand. I just
Mm-hmm.
eat them, and so I've always
Yep.
got to make sure when I go out that I don't have red around my face, but my hands are like for a month or two stained. This
Yes,
kind of
yes. I just got into my first one last night, believe it or not, and served it with dinner. And I've been munching on them ever since.
Yeah, I love them. I love them. Ladies and gentlemen, the book Herbal, it's Nat Geo's book, Herbal, 100 Herbs from the World's Healing Traditions. Mimi Prunella Hernandez is the author and my guest. There's so many things I want to talk about. Do you want to mention kind of briefly how you laid the book out?
Sure. So the book is 9 chapters, and it is based on a course that I used to teach called the Community Herbalist. And it's very much about different perspectives of being an herbalist. So it starts off as the sensory herbalist, where we're really just individually using our senses to look at herbs from the lens of energetics, hot and cold, slippery, dry, sandy, stimulating, sedating, just different ways of looking at herbs, and how they look and feel, and sometimes you can hear them, and then, we, of course, step right into the kitchen. The kitchen herbalist chapter is all about working with herbs in your kitchen and healthy foods. And from there, we go to the apothecary herbalist, where we do a little DIY and hands-on and remedies, and learn about different ways that herbalists make their herbal remedies. And yeah, from there, it just, we go outside to the garden, to the weeds, to the woods, to the community, and how herbs gather communities and have an impact on the communities around us. And we finish with the global herbalist perspective, where we visit the most traveled herbs in the world on the marketplace. And every chapter has, 11 or so herbs, and then, it's sprinkled also with world traditions, because I think it's really important to honor the cultures that this wisdom comes from, and keep telling those stories, so our wisdom is not lost,
It's
because
wonderful.
that's really
Yeah.
important.
I love this book is not, I donate a lot of books when I'm done with an interview, not this one. This one's staying.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I love it. A couple of things I want to ask you. Turmeric. I've liked turmeric for years. I actually recently had to look up if you can consume too much turmeric, because there's the oh God, what's it called? Golden milk, where you and I'm vegan, so I use a plant-based milk, but I ran out of the bag that I had, and I thought, let me look up a recipe. Oh God, I've been drinking it like every day, and I used to use it to get rid of headaches, and I
Mhm.
in the middle of the night just put some in the palm of my hand and throw it down and drink some water. And sometimes I'd have a golden ring around my helmet. It's so good for you. You tell us a little bit about turmeric.
It is so good for you. And turmeric's an old plant well, all plants are old, but turmeric is an ancient remedy from the Ayurvedic culture of India, who's been using it for thousands of years, for all kinds of health issues, for digestion, to keep the immune system healthy, and for cooking and nutrition. And so more recently, science has really revealed a lot of medicinal aspects of turmeric, especially the fact that it's a inflammatory mediator. And, when we look at inflammation, really inflammation is the seed to so many chronic illnesses, chronic pain, like you mentioned,
Yeah.
headache, even depression has an inflammatory component, just aches and pains. And so It's autoimmune condition. So it's no wonder that so many people are drawn to turmeric, because it really helps soften the symptoms of some of these inflammatory conditions. And it's just such a potent antioxidant, and scavenges free radicals. And when we think about antioxidants, or at least when I think about antioxidants, I think about keeping our tissues young and healthy and elastic and put together. So
Well, it's too late for me for that, all that, but I love it. I love it. And it's so good to know that it's good for you. I mean, I mix it with, I think it's ginger, black pepper. I can't think
that's
what all I
perfect.
mix it with. Yeah. And
That's
it's
perfect.
tastes good. I love it. Like
Yeah, it's interesting that you're drawn to mix black pepper with it, because, one of the other things that science has taught us is that when you mix your turmeric with black pepper, you get so much more absorption of turmeric, and so much more medicinal value from your turmeric. So mixing black pepper with it is also just a long time tradition. And it's just something that science has validated as, the two being very synergistic and working together.
I want to ask you, there's a couple of other specific ones that I want to ask you. Ashwagandha, we hear a lot about it, and I learned so much from your book. What can you tell us? I see it now everywhere, by the way. It's interesting because a lot of the things that I used to see at health food stores years ago, now I'm seeing in, I want to say, regular grocery stores sometimes, and in pharmacies, and which is wonderful. What can you tell us about ashwagandha?
Right. Ashwagandha is another herb, what they call the rasayan from Ayurveda, and rasayan are like elixirs of life and longevity. Ashwagandha is a root, and it's really revered for a vitality tonic. It really helps the organs to stay in tip-top shape. The adrenal glands, it's what we call an adaptogen, because it helps us confront stress and be more grounded in the face of day-to-day stress. And that's probably why we're seeing it everywhere. It's got some research there for reproductive vitality, sexual vitality, and even memory and cognition, but also thyroid health. And so it's a popular one, and it's out there. I wouldn't say it's the best remedy for everyone, but I do like it for people who just seem depleted, and people who seem kind of frail. That's where I think of ashwagandha being really great, for people to help replenish and restore. It's a building tonic. So if you feel like someone needs some blood building or bone building or hormone building, or just building the body mass a little bit, that's where I think of ashwagandha.
Wonderful. Again, the book available everywhere online. Nat Geo's Herbal, 100 Herbs from the World's Healing Traditions. Mimi Prunella Hernandez, the author, is my guest. I do want to suggest, this is, as we are approaching the gift-giving season, if you will, and this would make a great gift, a really great gift for anyone. Everybody can learn from your book. Everybody can learn, even if you think you know. Believe me, I thought I knew a lot. I knew nothing about to the depth that you have written in this book. I'm going to ask you about cannabis, and not just because I'm an aged flower child, but they just passed legalization in Ohio, let's say Tuesday, and I know they've had medical marijuana for a long time. Of course, I can go back. I remember when it was a felony. Possession was a felony, and it was very, very bad. But I smoked my share back then anyhow. What can you tell us about cannabis?
So cannabis is interesting, because when we first started this book, it was 99 herbs from the world's healing traditions. And I had finished writing the book, turned it in, everything. And then I heard from the higher ups at National Geographic that it was missing an herb, and they wanted cannabis in the book. So I just thought that was
That's
hilarious.
interesting.
I thought that was great. It just like tells us how far we've come, right? That the actual higher ups asked for cannabis in the book.
I'm
And
glad to hear that. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine. And I learned a lot about, because I've never been like the cannabis herbalist, because I always thought that was like someone else's niche.
Yeah.
And as a herbalist in North Carolina, I feel like I always had to be kind of careful. And so there's a lot more freedom now, which I celebrate. But yeah, I learned a lot about like the difference between hemp and cannabis, and the different strands, and just how there's cannabis, the relationship with humans and cannabis are such that humankind really created the very potent medicinal aspects of cannabis by selecting it over the generations to be super medicinal, and that medicinal value looks different to its receiver depending on who they are. But in some people it can really calm and ground anxiety, and in other people it aggravates anxiety. In some people it's really great to stimulate appetite if they need that, and like in convalescence or people in chemotherapy. But in other people that might be too much. And I think that's why I'm not really, I'm too sensitive for cannabis, and I'll just eat everything. So it never was my thing.
We used to call it the munchies in the olden
I,
days.
I was like, I can't do this. But I do have a great appreciation for it, and for people who have that relationship with it, and that having something in nature to deal with their issues and their concerns. I think it's
Breaking up just a little bit. Can you hear me? There you are. What somebody emailed about, can't just when we started talking about cannabis, I've got to look at this again. Something about what other herbs are available to help normalization of weight or weight loss is the question. Oh no.
Oh, well, there are a couple of herbs. There are a couple of herbs in the book that I spoke of for helping with weight loss. And green tea and rooibos tea, both are very high antioxidant tea that we drink in their respective cultures. They're just drink every day, right? In Africa, people drink rooibos tea every single day. Same thing with like Asian countries and green tea. And both of those teas have a high level of polyphenols, which have been associated with, of course, with a healthy diet, with weight loss. And so, I think just having a diet with lots of polyphenols and antioxidants, like another one that comes to mind is hibiscus. It's so chock full of antioxidants, and I've recently read a study about the association with hibiscus tea and potential weight loss. And so yeah, just drinking these high antioxidant teas, and especially replacing your sugary beverages with these teas can really help.
And you've got herbal love potions also, the Damiana and so many. Do you have, is there, oh, this might sound like a dumb question, but for everyone, are there certain herbs, or is there an herb that you think, maybe this is a bad question, everyone, that most people would benefit from? I think all,
Right.
right? I mean,
Well, I do think that there are some panacea out there that just kind of are a help with everything, and help with everyone. And one of those is green tea, but the other one I talked about in the Kitchen Herbalist book is the blueberries. You don't think about that as an herb per se, but I definitely included it because I think it's one of the easiest remedies that people can take is blueberries every day, or some kind of berries. We talked about this earlier, like pomegranates and strawberries. And what we know is like those bright red, blue, purple colors are so good for the blood vessels, for the cardiovascular tract, for the brain, for our memory, for cognition, for keeping our skin healthy. Like these, I think, are good for everyone, from children to elders and everyone in between, to have some berries every day. I think we're starving for antioxidants, and this is one easy way to get those in.
Absolutely. And I love blueberries. And I think I shouldn't say, I can't say most people do. I don't think I've ever met anybody that didn't like blueberries, but I'm sure they're out there. I'm sure there's someone saying, I'm not so fond of that. And you have some, I also love that you've got some like recipes in like I hope I'm pronouncing it right, chimichurri, that,
chimichurri. Mm-hmm.
yeah, and other things that you can do. And it's so informative. I know you've got to split in a couple of minutes, but it's so informative, the book. And how did it feel, by the way, turning the manuscript over to Nat Geo? I always
Yeah.
wonder what an author, it's like, okay, here it is. And it's
I
out of
mean, that
hands.
was awesome. And it wasn't, because the manuscript really, it came in pieces. It's just like, here's this chapter, here's that chapter, here's that section. And so it's more of like turning in that last chapter. For me, the last chapters were the intro and the very last part, the out, what I called the outro. But I actually went and got like a cabin to write both of those pieces in the same week. And I just really had to sit there and kind of ground myself and think about the whole book and what my intro and my outgoing take home messages would be. And that's when I really felt it, was when I kind of logged out of that Airbnb. And I was like, I'm done. And I went and I stopped at this restaurant on this country road. And fortunately, that restaurant had champagne. And I had a glass of champagne by myself and a nice little meal. And I was like, cheers to me. Like, I can't believe that, we're done. And of course, we weren't done. There was a lot of like back and forth and editing and fact checking and all this stuff. But yeah, that when I turned in that those two pieces, that was just felt amazing.
I've got time to mention shiitake mushrooms. I love mushrooms. I mean, there's so many. As I showed you earlier, Mimi, I've got like, I think I have more pages turned down than not in the book. I love it. Nat Geo's Herbal 100 Herbs from the World's Healing Traditions. Mimi Prunella Hernandez is the author and my guest. Mushrooms, shiitake mushrooms you write about, which are delicious.
Mhm.
A lot of
So
health.
yeah, very healthy. Medicinal mushrooms are really amazing, especially for shiitake mushrooms for the immune system. And also for preventing cancer and minimizing the effects of cancer. And I think one of the things I mentioned in the book that is really important when it comes to medicinal mushrooms is that one of the best ways to make them is by boiling them. And then you drink the broth. So the medicine is in that broth after a good boil. And you look at tradition in Asian countries that use medicinal mushrooms for a long time, they always did that. They always boiled them in soup and then drank that soup. So I love shiitake mushrooms and stir fries too. But first I'm going to boil them and put that broth aside for medicine. And then I'll fish out those boiled shiitake mushrooms and throw them in my stir fry. But I will always get the medicine out of them before I put them in a stir fry and eat them.
And that's great. Another great suggestion. By the way, your website, mimiprunellahernandez.com. We've got those links up, mimiprunellahernandez.com. I wish you didn't have to split, but I would love to talk more with you. The book is fantastic, Mimi, and I love your personality, by the way, also.
Oh, thanks. No, this was
You never
fun.
know. You never know.
Yeah, totally. This was
I'm
fun.
grateful that you wrote this and that Nat Geo published it, because there's so much information. And again, great gift for yourself and others. Great gift.
It really is. It's a beautiful book. Thank
It
you.
is. Well, it's National Geographic. So the pictures, everything in it is great, but the information is fantastic also. Thank you so much. Let's do the gig again.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much. Wow, folks, a lot of information.